this is the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and I've been using it for about a month now, and I'm bringing back a video format that I used to do a lot, but I haven't done in a while, and that is the good and the bad, the things I love, the things I hate. This is a format I used to do a lot. It's 2 different videos split up. So in this one, I will be particularly looking at the things that I am not a fan of with the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and I'll give you guys this quick list of the things I like. This isn't a full review, and this is only half of the video, so be sure to check out the other half. I'll have that uploaded tomorrow, or if you're watching this a few days late, it's already going to be up, so go check that out. I will have a card to it up here, and of course down in the description as well. So with that being said, let's get started in. The first thing I hate about this, the weight. This is the most heavy iPhone ever made. It comes in at 228 grams. That's 2 grams heavier than the previous heaviest iPhone, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and it has actually gotten bigger as well. So it's bigger, heavier. It feels like such a brick in the hand, and adding a case onto it just creates even more heft. It's crazy how big and uncomfortable this phone can start feeling very quickly. And adding onto that uncomfort is these flat edges, and I won't lie, they look absolutely fantastic. A very, very industrial look to it. I love the way this looks, and it's actually very comfortable to hold in the smaller sizes, but the bigger sizes, it just doesn't work as well. It definitely starts to feel uncomfortable after a while. The rounded edges of the 11 Pro Max, even though they didn't look as cool as this, they were definitely way more comfortable to hold. So that's something you have to keep in mind. If you do go for the bigger, the Pro Max, that's something to keep in mind. The flat edges definitely work against it in terms of comfort. And on the topic of flat sides, the flat display is also a little bit of a disappointment, because what I realized is even though the bezels on this are technically smaller than the 11 Pro Max, this actually feels like it has bigger bezels because of the flat display. With the curved glass, not the display, curved glass on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, it actually does a better job at hiding the bezel, and I didn't realize this until I got one with a flat display. And now I start realizing that there was a reason that curved glass was being used for so long on all these phones. It definitely makes the edges feel like they're less significant, and I didn't realize that until I got this phone. And I'm just a little bit conflicted now. I love the feel of this flat display. It's so much better for durability. It's so much easier for accessories, screen protectors, cases, but it just, the bezels don't look as good. But I think that's something I can learn to live with, but that's something that I definitely noticed and felt bad about. Continuing on to the topic of the display, this notch cannot be ignored. It is large, it is unnecessary, and Apple hasn't done anything in the last 3 years to even try to get it smaller. They have just completely ignored it. And I mean, there's not that many sensors. Even if they pulled the sensors tighter, closer to each other, they could reduce this bezel size very easily, this notch. They just don't want to. They just have left it and do whatever. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. There's no justification for this, and if you want to make fun of it, go right ahead, because I agree with you on this. So moving on to a final display-related quirk, I want to call it. It's not a quirk, it's a clear letdown. This is the lack of any higher refresh rate on this display. So most phones have now gone to a 120, 90 Hertz, even in a much lower price bracket than this. Every phone in this price bracket definitely has a higher refresh rate screen, except the iPhone 12 and 12 Pros. And I'll tell you why this is a letdown. It's because you're paying so much money for it, you expect to get, at least equivalent to the competition, and that's not what we've gotten here. But I will tell you this, there is a reason for it. This is not excusing Apple for not doing it, but it will at least help you understand why they didn't do it. This is not just because they wanted to save a feature to put in next year, or because they didn't want to do it. They were trying really hard to put 120 Hertz in. There are reports, even just a month before it went on sale, Apple was trying really, really hard to make this work. They had prototypes running with the 120 Hertz display, but they couldn't make it happen. My guess is there's 2 reasons. One, they just couldn't get enough suppliers to get on board at their quality level. Apple has a very high standard for quality, and Apple demands a lot of these numbers. Apple sells these by the millions, more than any other manufacturer would ever require. So they're kind of in a unique position where they need tons of these, and they need them to be very high quality, meeting their standards. So that makes it hard to find suppliers, and with COVID going around, it just wasn't possible. The second option is that Apple wanted LTPO displays. Now, I don't know the exact full term of it, but I will have it on the screen right here. This is a technology that allows the display to refresh variously all the way down from 1 Hertz or some low Hertz that they set to 120 or whatever the highest they said. So what that does is it will constantly change the refresh rate to match what you're doing on screen to preserve battery life. And I think that is absolutely essential to have, because if you have a locked 120 hertz screen, what it will do is it will absolutely destroy battery, and with 5G, that's not something you want. So that's what the two reasons I think is that are very likely possible that they didn't get 120 hertz on here. I know that it's very upsetting, but I do understand why it happened, and I just I hope that you guys understand as well. And as I was talking about 5G is another thing that, you know, right now it's not ready. So don't buy into the 5G hype, 5G marketing. And I just really think that you buy the phone without thinking about 5G at all, because 5G really isn't available widespread yet. And the speeds are sometimes, you know, most of the times actually, why even sugarcoat this? 90% of the times, 4G LTE has been faster for me than 5G. That's just the case. And building onto the 5G woes, battery life when you're using 5G is far from good. So in my testing, you know, I found a very different result between LTE and 5G. There's a reason the battery isn't a negative on here. I'll talk about that in my positives video, but I will very clearly mention if you're using 5G and you're using, you know, navigation, stuff like that, it will absolutely destroy your battery. And I have conducted multiple tests throughout the month to verify that result. This is not a fluke. 5G really does drain your battery at an incredibly higher rate than LTE does. So moving on, let's talk about the design itself. I love the stainless steel, but there's two things I'm not a fan of. One, this 5G band right here, which doesn't match with the color of the rest of the stainless steel band. And number two, just the finish of it, it seems to attract way more fingerprints than it did on my previous stainless steel iPhones. Now, this is the first one I've gotten that isn't space gray or black, which may be the reason. But I just see so many more fingerprints on the stainless steel frame this time than I've ever seen, and it's quite distracting. It almost makes it impossible to use without a case if you like to keep this neat and protected, because otherwise you're just constantly going to have to, you know, clean this with a microfiber cloth or something, because the second you put a finger on it, it's smudged up and it's very, very noticeable. Number 9, the cameras here. The cameras are great, but the problem is that they stick out so much that the lens is the furthest thing. And if you guys know the design, if you've seen it, you know that there's a ring around the camera. So it doesn't make sense to me why the ring is around the lens, but it doesn't come up higher than the lens itself. It's stupid. Why not? I mean, that's the entire point of that ring, right? To protect it. Well, it's pretty clear now it's a design element, not a element of protection. So it's weird. I really wish that they would have just brought that ring up further high so that there is at least another extra layer of protection, because these cameras can get scratched, and it's unfortunate that that layer of protection is right there, but it's just like that 0.1 millimeter away from being complete. And talking about the cameras, let's talk about the AR sensor. So Apple is selling AR a lot now, and while it's not incredibly heavy-handed like the 5G marketing is, it obviously is there. And I haven't found any real-world usages for it yet. I have tried to, you know, think of ways to use it, but I can only specifically think of things like mapping out my entire apartment for, you know, using this. Like, there are no real-world usages I have found yet. I don't play AR games on my phone, and I don't think many people do either. So it's an interesting feature that I'm sure there may be future uses for, but Apple included it, but really didn't explain or sell us on ideas of why AR is useful to us right now. So that's something that you have to think about as well. So don't buy the Pro just because it has that AR camera either. There's no real world usage so far. Moving on, let's talk about this display. And I don't have a problem with the display, but I do have a problem with the lack of any intuitive new features or additions to such a large display. This is the largest display on an iPhone ever, but it has the same exact feature set as the iPhone 12 mini. Like, there's no differentiation when you're using the software between this and the mini. There's no extra menus, there's no addition, there's nothing taking advantage of this massive screen, which makes no sense to me. Why not? Like, why would you not do that? And even like the number of apps you can have, the rows of apps, you guys, is the same exact thing as it is on the 12 mini. And it's pretty clear because there's so much leftover space here that could be utilized, but it isn't. It's just there. It's consistent to a fault, which is very annoying, especially because you're carrying on such a massive phone. At least give me some software features to justify it, besides just, you know, having more on the screen compared to the 12 mini. It really seems like such a sore point to me. Why not do it? Just do something about it, Apple. And finally, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the lack of charger in the box. Now, this is a very frustrating thing. The public thinks that it's because Apple wants to make a lot of money. They just want to milk their customers for even more profit. Apple says it's for the environment. It reduces their, the size of their boxes. It means they can ship more in one pallet. There's a lot of explanation they gave, not to mention the e-waste with most consumers already having a charger brick. Apple justified it in their way. The public saw it in another way. But the reality, with what I have to say is, it's a little bit of both. Apple's not wrong. They're right. If you've seen the new boxes, 2 of them fit in the footprint of one older iPhone box, and that's all from removing one charger. When you think about it, now that they can fit 2 in the size of one, they can double the amount of shipments they send out from their factory, meaning less flights, less trucks, less everything, which does have an impact. Not to mention, those chargers are not used by everyone. So yes, there are people who will want them, but there are a lot of people who have been using iPhones for years now. They have a bunch of chargers. They don't need them. Now, is it wrong? I think it is. Apple should sell chargers with their phones. It's an essential thing to using the phone. I can't use the phone without a charger. It needs to be in the box. But I do understand the move behind it. So yes, I think that there is a profit idea behind it for sure. They're making more money. People are buying more 20-watt chargers from them now. But I also do understand that the reality is there needs to be a little bit more environmentally conscious, which Apple is doing. So it's a win-win for them. They're environmentally conscious and making more money. I think that for Apple, this is an extreme win. For the customers, not so much. And that's where I land on it. I understand why it's happening, not happy about it. So that is what I think about the 12 Pro Max. These are just the things I don't like. The things I like coming up in another video. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check that out as well. And if you have any questions, or if you want to add any comments on what I thought, or if you have your own quirks or issues with this phone, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media. I have all the handles right here on the screen, and of course down in the description as well. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.